You are listening to Bedtime Dreamy Tales. Share and subscribe our channel. Story title: The Seven Foals. Once upon a time, in a dense forest far from any village, lived a humble couple in a small, run-down hut. Their days were spent struggling to find enough food, and life was a constant challenge. Despite their hardships, they had 3 sons. The youngest, Cinderlad, was so named because he spent his time lounging among the ashes by the hearth, dreaming of adventures. One day, the eldest son decided he must venture out to find work and help his family. With their parents' reluctant blessing, he set off. After a day of travel, he came upon a magnificent royal palace. The king himself stood on the steps, looking regal and grand. "Where are you going, young man?" the king asked. "I'm seeking employment, Your Majesty," replied the eldest son. "Would you like to watch my 7 foals?" the king inquired. "If you can tell me what they eat and drink each day, you shall have my daughter's hand in marriage and half my kingdom. But if you fail, 3 red stripes will be cut into your back." The eldest son, confident in his abilities, accepted the challenge. At dawn, the king's master of the horse led out the 7 foals. They bolted off through the countryside, and the eldest son chased them through forests and over hills. By midday, exhausted and disoriented, he stumbled upon a cleft in a rock where an old woman sat spinning with a distaff. "Come here, my handsome son, and let me comb your hair," she called out. Desperate for rest, the eldest son agreed. He lay his head on her lap, and she combed his hair until dusk. As night approached, he knew he couldn't return without an answer for the king. The old woman gave him a bottle of water and a bit of moss. "Show these to the king and say they are what the foals eat and drink," she instructed. When the eldest son presented these to the king, the monarch knew immediately that he had not done his duty. In his anger, the king ordered 3 red stripes be cut into the lad's back and sent him home. Back at the hut, the eldest son shared his woeful tale, vowing never to seek his fortune again. The next day, the second son decided it was his turn to seek fortune and fame. Despite his parents' protests and his brother's warning, he set out determinedly. Like his brother, he reached the king's palace by nightfall and was offered the same challenge. Believing he could succeed where his brother had failed, the second son eagerly accepted. However, his day of chasing the foals mirrored his brother's experience. Exhausted and lost, he too encountered the old woman in the cleft of the rock. "Come here, my handsome son, and let me comb your hair," she repeated. The second son, also desperate for rest, agreed. The old woman gave him the same bottle of water and bit of moss. That evening, when the king asked what his foals ate and drank, the second son gave the same incorrect answer. Enraged, the king ordered 3 red stripes be cut into his back and sent him home. Upon his return, the second son lamented his fate, declaring he would never again seek his fortune. On the 3rd day, Cinderlad announced his intention to watch the foals. His family laughed and mocked him, reminding him of his lazy habits. But Cinderlad was determined. After much pleading, his parents reluctantly let him go. By nightfall, he too arrived at the king's palace. The king, wary from past experiences, was reluctant to hire him. "If you are as useless as your brothers, I have no use for you," the king declared. "Just give me a chance," Cinderlad insisted. "Very well," sighed the king, "but remember the consequences." At dawn, the foals were released, and Cinderlad chased them tirelessly. When he reached the old woman in the cleft of the rock, she called out to him, "Come here, my handsome son, and let me comb your hair." But Cinderlad, recalling his brother's tales, refused. Instead, he grabbed the tail of the youngest foal and held on tightly. "Hold on," said the foal. "We have a long journey ahead." With Cinderlad on its back, the foal galloped over vast distances, through forests and across rivers. Along the way, the foal spoke. "You must wield the sword you'll find and cut off our heads on your wedding day to break the spell a mighty troll has cast upon us. Place each head by the tail it belongs to, and we will become princes again." Cinderlad promised to remember. They eventually reached a thick birch tree. The eldest foal kicked it aside, revealing a door. Inside was a small room with a rusty sword and a pitcher. "Drink from the pitcher to gain strength," said the foal. Cinderlad did so and found he could now lift the sword with ease. Taking it with him, they continued their journey. After many more miles, they crossed a bridge and saw a church tower in the distance. When they reached the church, the foals transformed into 7 splendid princes. Inside, they received bread and wine from the priest, who blessed them. Cinderlad took some of the consecrated bread and a flask of wine. Returning to the palace, they went so fast that they barely noticed the old woman's angry cries. It was nightfall when they reached the king, who asked if Cinderlad had watched faithfully. "Yes, Your Majesty," Cinderlad replied, showing the bread and wine. "This is what your foals eat and drink." The king, seeing the truth, declared, "You shall have my daughter and half the kingdom." The wedding preparations began. On the day of the feast, Cinderlad excused himself and went to the stable. He remembered the foals' instructions and cut off their heads, carefully placing each head by the tail it belonged to. Immediately, the foals transformed back into 7 handsome princes. When Cinderlad returned with the princes, the king was overjoyed. The wedding was a grand celebration with joy and merriment echoing through the land. Cinderlad married the princess and, as promised, received half the kingdom. And so they lived happily ever after with the 7 princes free from their curse, each setting out to find their own kingdoms. Cinderlad proved that even those underestimated can achieve great things with determination and a kind heart. If you like this story, please give this video a like. For more stories, go to bedtimedreamytales.com. See you in the next story.